Welcome back to the Abridged to Motherhood podcast. I cannot wait for you to hear this episode with Kasia today. She is so intelligent and has so much wisdom to offer us about how our cycles mirror our lives throughout our entire lives, but also in our journey from pre-pregnancy, our fertility journey, to pregnancy, to postpartum, and beyond. I'm Danielle, your host of the Abridged to Motherhood podcast, the place where moms like you learn to thrive, not just survive through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. I'm a birth and postpartum doula and a mom of two who's been where you are. My first pregnancy was filled with so much excitement, but it was also marked by stress, anxiety, and fear of the unknown. I thought I had everything mapped out, but when postpartum hit, I realized how unprepared I was for the physical, emotional, and mental toll of motherhood. It was overwhelming, lonely, and nothing like I imagined. When I found out I was pregnant again, I knew I needed to approach things differently. I made it my mission to not only prepare for postpartum, but to prioritize myself in the process. That shift changed everything. Now I'm here to help you do the same. Whether you're navigating your first pregnancy, feeling buried under endless advice, or struggling to figure out what you actually need for postpartum, this podcast is your safe space. You'll find practical tips, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you feel informed, supported, and empowered through every stage of motherhood. If you're ready to feel confident, prepared, and truly supported in your motherhood journey, stick around. This is for you. I am here with Kasia Stiggelbout. She is the founder of InFlow, a women's wellness brand dedicated to helping women heal from burnout and find balance through productivity tools aligned with feminine cycles. InFlow's flagship product, a personalized planner, starts on day one of a woman's cycle instead of a random Monday, and offers tailored guidance for movement, nutrition, productivity, and spiritual practices, helping women align their schedules with their energy and embrace their inner rhythms. Kasia also hosts The Other Way, a podcast featuring inspiring conversations exploring the path less traveled in spirituality, wellness, and health. Before venturing into women's health, Kasia spent over a decade in tech, leading teams at companies like Microsoft and AI startups and organizing TEDx events in San Francisco. Her experience with burnout inspired her mission to create products supporting women's well-being. Kasia is a graduate of the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, an avid meditator, and a yogi. In her free time, she enjoys hiking with her husband, Zach, and their small pup, Zoe. Thank you so much for coming on, Kasia. I'm so excited to have you here. And thank you so much for my planner. I absolutely love it. It's beautiful.
Oh, well, I'm so happy to be here. And it was such a joy to get to send it to you. I love being able to share it with women who totally get the idea. So, and based off of your incredible content and mission, you're right there. So pumped to get to meet you too.
I want to hear a little bit more about that burnout story because I know so many of us can relate.
Yes. So many women are burned out. I think I saw a stat the other day that was published that it was something about, I think it was almost 50% of women in the workplace are experiencing burnout. And then I can only imagine what that looks like for women who are juggling childcare, working at home, working in the workplace, both, one or the other. So it definitely is such an epidemic in our culture. And InFlow for me is truly the product that I wish existed when I was going through the height of my burnout. Just for a little bit of context, you shared it so well in your intro, but I spent over a decade really climbing the corporate ladder, buying into a lot of productivity narratives. No hustle, no success without hustle, or rest when you're dead kind of montage, or no pain, no gain, whether that were to apply to my movement practices or work habits. And the reality is that that is just a lie, especially for women it is a lie. We are built differently. Our hormones are different. And regardless of what life stage you're in, since I know that your podcast speaks to women that are at all different stages, may it
Mm-hmm.
be postpartum, new mothers, deep in their mothering journey, or on a fertility journey like I am myself, which is why I love the name, this like bridge to motherhood. It's so beautiful. But anyway, regardless of what season of life you're in, I think the main takeaway that I would love to leave for your listeners is that for women, especially, our lives are seasonal. Every single month you experience internal seasons. And if those are not honored, we will experience imbalance. That's just a little bit of, I can definitely get into the story, but I just wanted to start with that because I think it's so important to at least land there.
So true. I mean, I know I myself subscribed to that for so long of the hustle culture. And I think so many of my listeners can relate to that as well. I think as millennials, most of us are millennials that listen to my podcast, and maybe even the start of Gen Z coming into their motherhood journey. We were told to do these things. We were told we needed to go to college to be successful and we needed to work really hard, and we were rewarded for those things too. So, understanding, like you said, about the cycle that we are in within the month and then seasonally throughout our motherhood journeys is just, it's so much of what I talk to my clients about because every phase as your baby is growing and as you're growing as a mother is so seasonal. As soon as you think you have something figured out, the next season comes along.
So true. So true. I'm curious, how do you feel like the dominant narrative of more productivity, more doing, the moment that you have a bit of downtime, fill it up with something to do, that, it's all about the output versus the ebb and flow of doing and rest. How do you feel like that has translated in your own experience as a mother?
Especially with my first baby, I totally felt that way. The second she went down for a nap, it was, what should I be doing? I should be doing something. My worth was found in what I was doing. And I really had to deprogram that message, that lie. And I literally had sticky notes over the washing machine and by the dishes where I would be cleaning to remind myself that this is not what my worth was founded. Because until I went back to work at 12 weeks, what else did I have to focus on but my home? And I had to come back to the truth that my worth was not found in those things and that I was a great mother and who I was outside of motherhood as well. So, with my second, I really did not want to repeat that same mistake. And just learning more about myself and becoming a mother, I knew how important rest was. And honoring that time of rest, especially right after baby is born, there's nothing more important than listening to your body and being intuitive. And I love that you can use your planner even if you're not menstruating, because we do, there's still a cycle throughout the month, and recognizing when we need to take those breaks and come inward rather than outward and honoring that. It just made that second early postpartum experience so much better for me. And I think for my whole family too, because I was in a better place.
Oh my gosh. I mean, well, not only can I relate to that narrative of my value is my worth is tied to my output and what I achieve. And unfortunately, that is just such a dominant narrative in our culture. And we can blame it on many things, but the beauty of it is that I think it is a deeply feminine narrative to take that back and change it, right? And
Right.
we'll obviously get into it, but women are such cyclical beings. We're cyclical beings every month. We are cyclical beings over the course of our lives. Like the internal seasons that we experience, which we could talk about how they're tied to our hormones, but from menstruation through the start of menstruation until the start of our next cycle, we have four kind of internal thematic seasons that are taking place in our bodies. And those are mirrored in nature. Those are mirrored over the course of our lives when we're in our spring or summer versus in our fall or winter as we get older. And though our society, I think, by and large, has allowed that to fall to the wayside in order to capitalize on a every day is the same kind of thinking and productivity over everything, which does actually align for men a bit more, just how they're hormonally programmed to have the same hormonal cycle every day. Even though we've optimized for that, I think we're in such a good place to change that narrative. And so, what makes me so excited is a tool that, and this is not even about the planner, I actually think it's quite bigger than that, a philosophy that I think leads a lot of women to experience burnout and a whole host of symptoms associated with that. I mean, when we're moving against our bodies, we're not moving in flow, in ease. We are honestly ignoring what is deeply inherently feminine within us. And so, what I'm so excited about is that every day that a woman chooses to lean into those yin feminine qualities, we are kind of, I don't know, like sticking it to the man, not like sticking it to the man, but yeah, like it's like a revolution. There's a book, there's a great book called Rest is a Revolution, or Rest is Revolutionary, or something like that. It's excellent. I'll send it to you after this, but it truly is. And I'm just so excited to hear, you just like women of all stages and life stages can relate to that. It's huge.
Oh, absolutely. And while you were talking about the yin stage, it made me think of there's a book that I share with clients. It's called The Fourth Trimester. And in so many other cultures, especially Asian cultures, and I'm sure we could get into a whole bunch about that. There is so much more respect for the postpartum period, and typically the mother-in-law or the mother will either move back in with the family, or the mother and father and baby will move back in with their parents, and she is taken care of. And there's this idea that we wrap the womb to keep it warm, and we eat warming foods to nourish our bodies. And there's science behind that too. It actually, those warming foods are easier to digest. And when our organs are moving back in place and you're coming down off of birth, that is so important. I think in our westernized culture, it is more masculine. There is a more masculine energy. And as I've come into this doula work, I think it really has helped me to hone in a little bit more on my feminine side. And as I'm starting to run my own business, leaning into those times of my cycle when I am feeling more creative around ovulation and I want to record a podcast episode or pump out content versus during menstruation to kind of go inward and reflect. And the planner is, there's so much reflection piece in here. And I just think as mothers, especially, we just don't have the same capacity that we, or time that we used to have before motherhood to reflect because our minds are so busy with our kids and with our own taking care of a family. So to sit down and reflect on what we truly need and what we are going through at different stages of the month can just empower you so much more in that feminine energy too.
Ah, I love, love, love that you brought this up. There's something so interesting in Chinese medicine. So I actually left like when I left Microsoft, I went to study Chinese medicine,
Mm.
and I absolutely love, love, love the philosophy. I just adore it. And it is so interesting that you bring up that fourth trimester, because there are certain times, like according to TCM, where our Jing essence, which is the essence that we're born with, which is kind of like our savings account from a energy health perspective, there are certain moments in our lives where we can replenish that essence, and postpartum is one of them.
Mhm.
And every time we bleed is another one. And I think one of the things that totally blew my mind is this concept of, we in the West, I think we think, oh, mind over matter. If I push my body through this, I will reap the benefits. And I'm not trading off on anything. Like the trade off kind of is like, oh, we just lose some sleep, or, we feel a little tired and we drink some coffee, problem solved. But the reality is that we're just pulling from our savings account, so to speak. And after birth, that is a time where that savings account has really been depleted because we just gave birth to life, right?
Mhm.
And it is just such a prime opportunity to replenish ourselves. And if we take care of ourselves during those times, then we actually build back Jing essence. It's almost like there's not like a void, but there's a energetic point where we can really replenish ourselves if we take care of our bodies correctly. So I so love that you mentioned that. And it is kind of wild, just the notion that after you literally give birth, like your body has been through this insane thing, you're just supposed to get up and like go about your day and do laundry while trying to take care of another life. Like this just blows my mind every single time. It really
Yeah.
does. It's so strange.
And especially if you have been so used to living your life that way already, it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. You just keep going. But that book that I mentioned, The Fourth Trimester, and then there's another woman I love following. Her name's Miranda Bauer. She's Postpartum University, and she does a lot with nutrition as well. And there's just so much research that shows that women will end up with autoimmune diseases after giving birth. They will end up with a host of medical issues because you are already in a state of depletion or that void, like you were saying, from pregnancy and then giving birth. And then if you are breastfeeding, you're continuing to deplete yourself of nutrients and vitamins and minerals. So it's so important during that time to take care of yourself holistically, not just rest, but also nutritionally and even the way that we move our bodies, which is in your planner about the different times of the month and how we move our bodies according to our cycle. So it's such a hard topic to brace with women because we never want to come off as judgmental of how anyone is dealing with their postpartum experience. We all have different issues. We all have different familial situations, and someone might say, I can't rest. I have no help. But there are ways, if we want to be problem solvers, to allow ourselves that rest and really about what we prioritize. Like you said, are we going to prioritize that productivity culture, or are we going to lean into that feminine side and really hone in on what our bodies need intuitively?
And I will absolutely call out the very real privilege that some women have, the family support, the resources to get more of that support if they choose to lean into that. And that is really very real. And I would argue that each of us, in the same way that there was like a feminist movement to push for equal wages and women in the workplace, every single time we push for normalizing the fact that women's bodies are different, the way that we operate is different in different phases of our lives, we're going to have these different needs. The more that we honor that, the more we can culturally shift the narrative. And for me, it's interesting. I almost see like what's happening on Earth, like from an environmental standpoint, like mirroring what's happening in our kind of cultural standpoint in so many ways. Have you ever seen the Tai Chi symbol, like yin and yang?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's yin and yang. Yin represents feminine, darkness, rest. Yang is that productivity, heat, fire, sunlight. And one exists within the other. This is a Taoist symbol, actually, originally. So, again, from Eastern philosophy, there's a drop of yin within yang, and there's a drop within of yang within yin. And so these are interconnected. And traditionally speaking, they're in constant motion where you can't really see the separation between each of the different aspects. However, if you have an overwhelming amount of yang, it just eats into the yin. And if you have an overwhelming amount of fire without rain, we have drought. If you have an overwhelming amount of fire and energy in our day to day life without rest, you have burnout. Every single step that we can take to push back in the other direction, especially in women, that's just bringing some balance into how we think about things. And it's the same, I think, with movements that push for regenerative agriculture and just more sustainable ways of operating. But I'm happy also to get into what's happening physiologically because I think that that is actually really important. It's not just an energetic philosophical concept, but there is biology rooted in what we're talking about here too that I think is really important for women to know. Earlier I talked about the 4 seasons that we as women experience within our bodies, and these are really beautiful metaphors for what's happening within. And day one, so to speak, of the cycle starts with menstruation. That is the menstrual phase. If you might have heard about a concept called cycle syncing, which is the practice of acknowledging, honoring, and practicing lifestyle changes around your cycle, which is really what we're talking about. So, the first phase, known as the menstrual phase, is known as that phase of inner winter. And you can really think about this as a very inward time. This is the beginning of things. It's the start, day one of the planner if you're using it. But for any woman that's just out there listening and thinking about their cycle month over month, day one is the start of a new cycle. It is also the time when your hormones are at their lowest. This is what also happens postpartum. So you can think of this inner winter being very much extended postpartum as you wait for your cycles to come back. And for women who are cycling normally every single month, this is that time of low energy, high intuition. This is a time where rest is so important, and you can actually practice some of that rebuilding. When we were talking about the 4th trimester, the period of rebuilding, we have an opportunity as women, even if you're on a fertility journey and you're not pregnant yet, like you have an opportunity to lean into that every single month, that rebuilding of our resources to really prepare your body for pregnancy, postpartum, or if you're after having a child, it's still a good time to replenish every single month. So, the themes for that inner winter phase: rest, restoration. This is a powerful time of reflection as well. So, something that's really cool that I like to mention to women when I'm talking about this is we often think of, oh, the period right before our menstruation starts or right at the start of our menstruation, our energy is low. It's such a bad time because I can't be getting things done and it's harder for me. But guess what, ladies? Like, our intuition is at its highest. Before you get your period, our intuition is rising as our energy is dwindling, and those two are inversely related. And so when it comes to thinking about how can I tap into that potential, there is an opportunity for us as women to lean into our intuitive side during this time. This is a time where a lot of women, if they're really conscious of this, will notice a lot of clarity come through in things that have been blocking them in the past. So maybe right before your period starts, you might feel stuck on something or looping on negative thoughts. Whoosh, it starts to clear out with your bleed. The same applies to productivity. You might have an opportunity to suddenly have a meta view of your work process, or if you're working in the home, how you're navigating things or organizing things. And you just have a shift in perspective that is possible here if we're attuned to it. So, this is the very first start. And we're going to go through literally every one of the seasons, going into spring, then summer, then fall/autumn, right? And then starting the next cycle. And the main thing that I want to mention as we kind of journey through this is that each of these phases are not distinct. Listen to your own body. That is the most important thing. As you transition out of winter, it might look very different for every woman. It could be day 3 or 4 for some women. It could be day 7 for others. Hormonally speaking, estrogen is starting to rise as we move into spring. And this is where you're going to notice, from an energetic point of view, springs of creativity. So, as somebody who works kind of in the creative space, this is where I love prototyping. If I were working with engineers, this would be the time where we would be actually designing and iterating on new concepts, new ideas, testing them out, right? This is a very creative space. And again, if we're attuned to it, we can tap into that. This is a time where, because our energy is rising, our movement routine can also increase, right? So we were resting in winter, starting to come out in spring, and then into summer. Now, a fun kind of hormonal fact that I want to throw in here, there is so much research to say that estrogen is very protective to our muscles. So, doing things like higher intensity workouts, strength workouts, as we move away from winter into spring and summer, we can actually prevent some injury versus doing those same workouts later in our cycle. And the
Mm-mm.
second thing that I want to mention is that strength workouts are actually more effective in this spring/summer stage in terms of muscle gain. So it's not just a Instagram narrative that we should kind of think about tweaking our workouts. There are hormonal implications on it too. We're in the spring phase, energy's rising, creativity. This is a great time for higher kind of intensity movement and build up with your energy as it grows. So dancing, strength training, love strength training during this time. And this is kind of like the theme of spring into summer. And as we transition into summer, this is like your Beyonce phase from a hormonal point of view. Your estrogen is peaking. This is when you're ovulating. This is around the time where you may notice a lot of outward energy as well. There's a reason for this, right? Like we're ovulating, we're feeling a bit more sensual in our bodies. This is such a great time to lean into that. From a productivity point, I, as you mentioned, have a podcast. I try to prioritize my podcast interviews like between spring and summer and early fall. I don't go into like luteal and menstrual phase. I don't know. Have you been practicing something like that too in your flow?
I try to, yes. It doesn't always work out, but I am in my spring leaning into summer right now. And I do. I feel so much more creative. I want to have those conversations. I want to be out and about and go out with friends during this time. And the more I lean into that, the more return I see in my relationships, in my business, and just how I feel personally too.
Yeah, it's so powerful. It really makes a difference. Sometimes I too will forget. And I feel like the universe just has my back because that's usually when something will get bumped or moved. So, yeah, like an interview. But I feel so much better when I prioritize those times. Spring, summer, especially summer, that's the ovulatory phase, that outward confidence, perfect for pitch meetings, perfect for executive calls. The idea is not how can I be rigid and only schedule those meetings during that time or those kind of themes or focus on activities around those themes during that time, but it's more how can I capitalize on that time and make sure that when I can, I am doing those things because you're just going to notice so much more success in the flow and ease of your life. As we kind of move into the final season before the start of a new cycle. That's really the fall/autumn season. There are almost like two parts to it. In the beginning part of your luteal phase, which is that fall/autumn phase, you still will have a lot of lingering energy from ovulation. You might start to notice that dwindling as you near the end of your cycle. And this will look really different for every woman. Again, that's why I'm really reluctant to be prescriptive with specific dates. But the themes here are as our energy starts to go down, our intuition starts to rise. And one of the most powerful things that I noticed during this time is that this is a time where a lot of inner unresolved narrative will come up for me, unresolved problems will come up for me. And if I'm attuned to them and turn towards them instead of turning away from them, the way that our culture has programmed us to do, right? PMS, bad. Pretend you're not PMSing, keep on going out, ignore any bad feelings, right? If I turn towards those feelings, then I'm actually able to work through them in a way where they don't influence the rest of my cycle. And if I honor what's coming up and I don't give in to some of the negative emotions, but instead sit with them and work through them, it's just such a powerful release. And so it's really a gift that we have this every single month. We have an opportunity to go into the depths, into the shadow side, and just come out feeling so much more connected to ourselves. It's a deeply feminine gift. In the luteal phase, this is definitely a time where, as that energy goes down, you'll want to adjust things like your workouts as well during this time. Start to kind of reduce the intensity. Progesterone will rise and then fall in this phase. And if we're doing too many high stress things, maybe high stress workouts, lots of caffeine, not enough sleep, if we're not starting to move into that resting of winter, we might actually throw that progesterone off balance because cortisol and progesterone are at odds. As we taper off into our luteal phase, we've like ended our season, and then the seasons start again with the start of a new winter, a new year, so to speak, every single month, a beautiful time for like cleansing and renewing. And this cycle happens every single month. It's also mirrored in the seasons. And it is mirrored in the phases of our life too. So, as women, if we zoom out, we can see a similar mirroring there, which I'm happy to get into. But that was a lot. So, I just want to pause there and chat about that.
I think it's so helpful because even now, I would say I didn't really get into this idea of cycle syncing until after I had my second child. I mean, I was 31 years old before, or 32 before I had even heard of it. And at least for me, there's such a part of me that does want to push against it. And especially like you were saying, in we're moving into our luteal phase and into menstruation, the older I get, the more I'm, and the more therapy I do, the more I'm learning to sit with those negative emotions, but also recognize them for what they are. Okay, we are in this phase of the cycle right now. This is kind of normal for me to be feeling this way. Let's accept it and also use that because my body and my mind are trying to tell me something right now. If I can tune into what that message is, sometimes it's I'm doing too much and I need to slow down. Or what can I remove? Or how can I be gentler with the way that I'm speaking to myself? When I'm in tune with my cycle and I know what's coming, I don't see those highs and lows as so high and so low. I just see them as that normal part of my life and my cycle, like you said, because it does mirror our life. As my daughter, she's 7, as we're coming
Mm.
closer to, I'm thinking about these things a lot of how I want to approach, how I'm talking to her about her cycle and the beauty that's within that cycle that God gave us this cycle and it mirrors nature and like you've talked about and how I'm going to kind of walk her through beginning her cycle and then as as we go on in our lives as women, going through pregnancy and postpartum and perimenopause someday and all of those types of things.
Ugh, I love that. You're so lucky to have a daughter. I'm curious, what, I mean, this might even be too soon, but how are you thinking about sharing this with her? Like, have you thought about that? Or like, what would you want to do differently or make sure that you do from the get-go? It's
Mhm.
such a loaded question because it's probably
Ugh.
so different than the way we were taught about what this all was.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think my mom was very good about having conversations with me, but when I actually started my cycle, she was out of town. She was
My
visiting
mom
a
too.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, my mom was in a complete other state. I tried to call her and she was not, this was like pre-cell phone. So she wasn't at her friend's house at that time. And I ended up calling my friend's mom. And something that I loved that she did, and she answered the phone and I told her what was going on and she said, "Welcome to the sisterhood." And she made me feel so warm and excited about my experience. And so I want to incorporate that with my daughter as well. I mean, I know there's been a trend of doing these period parties, like, and I don't know if I want to go that far, but I want me to be the first person that we talk about it. And I talk about it openly with her now. I mean, she knows. She asks questions. She sees what's going on. She watched me nurse her brother. So she's seen those ups and downs. And I think just not hiding it and answering questions honestly and age appropriately. It's very important to me that it's not health class the first time
Yeah.
that we're
Yeah.
really getting into it. I don't know if that was your experience as
Yeah,
well.
no, that was definitely not my experience. It's so funny to be spending so much time thinking and talking about the beauty of the female cycle because I reflect on how I was initially indoctrinated into having a cycle. My mom was out of town as well. She was visiting her sister who had just gone through surgery, and her sister lives abroad. And my dad was taking care of us, and he had been feeding us fast food for a whole week, which is something that we're never really allowed to eat. And I woke up with like the worst cramps of my life.
Oh
And then I
no.
was bleeding. And my immediate thought was, I'm dying. Like, I'm dying from this fast food that I ate.
Oh
Like, that
no.
I'm having some sort of like a reaction, which is so funny to think about now. But it was really scary. It was actually scary at the time. And so I love that you're, of course, like age appropriately sharing with your daughter because it's crazy to me that it wasn't even my first thought that this is what that could be. Like, I just wasn't really educated about
Mhm.
that. And also, I got my period for the first time when I was 14, which I think is a little bit older than like a lot of girls are getting their periods this like these days. It's much younger these days, I
I
think.
think I was 11, 12, maybe had just turned 12.
Have you heard of Spirit Weavers, by the way? Total
Uh,
tangent, but I feel like I
No.
could bring this up. Oh my gosh, you
No.
would love it.
Okay.
It's a gathering of women. It's like it is definitely is the sisterhood, and it happens every summer. And I went last year for the first time, and I'm going this year. And they have this keiki camp for girls. Like they have camp for girls of all different ages, like younger girls, because women come to this gathering with their kids, with their mothers. It's like women of all ages. It truly is magnificent. I don't think I've ever experienced just a space that feels so welcoming to women and mothers and elder women because we kind of celebrate this like one chunk of society, like
Mhm.
the preconception parts, right? Like the maiden is so celebrated in our society, and this kind of gathering is it's on the land. It's like a camp. It's a camping situation, but they definitely have like a keiki camp and a moonbeams camp for the young girls that are like between I think 11 to 13, and they definitely have like workshops about cycles and stuff like that, and I just thought that was so beautiful. It's
That
just like
is.
a nice way to educate girls on it. So yeah.
It's so important too for us to see women at each stage of life. There's so much wisdom to be gleaned. And not only that, but I see the way, my grandmothers light up when they see my daughter. So they're her great grandmas. And there's just something about women being together and that nurturing that happens just naturally. So I love that camp has all ages there. I do see a swing back in our society of prioritizing the mom. I think
Yeah.
I think there was, like you were talking about in the feminist movement, 70s, 80s, 90s, there was so much push for w women to have everything, right? To work and be a good mom and all of these things. And now I see even so many of my friends, we want to be home with our children as much as we can. And then we also want to use this creative side that's within us, whether that's entrepreneurship, just exploring different hobbies and passions that have maybe been sitting dormant, but now that there is time, a little more time and space away from that corporate or that working world, this new area to fill. And because of that, I think there's a drive for more women to create. And I think we're going to see even more of that. I mean, I know society, the pendulum swings one way and swings back the other, but there is this big push of, the homesteading and homeschooling
Yes.
and coming inward to the family more. So it's really interesting to
Oh,
see.
I'm so excited to see that actually. It is so interesting. I was talking to my husband about this the other day. It's kind of wild that in the same like 15-year span, women are expected to ramp up their career, get married, and have babies, right? Like we're kind of
Right.
extending that span now with reproductive technology. But I just feel like we need a narrative that kind of talks about, well, what about women in their 40s pursuing new careers, like when they're or in their 50s, when their kids are older?
Hmm.
It doesn't just need to be you cram it all into this 15-year period of time. That's a lot of pressure. And that's why I think really emphasizing not the version of women that women act like little men, which is like every single day is the same. This is how men work and operate. Therefore, if women do the same, then we can be equal players in the workplace, in the world. But if we emphasize a feminine way of doing things, I think that would also be the next thing to fall in line, like celebrating women at all ages. Like women don't expire from being creative when they turn 45 or 40. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
have you heard of Erica Komisar? She was on several podcasts. She wrote the book Being There. It's about like how the first couple of years of life are so important to have a maternal figure in a child's life. She's very controversial.
No, but I love that because I felt such a pull to be home with my kids. I stayed home for about a year and a half after my daughter, went back to work for about 2 years, and then after I had my son, I was a teacher. I quit, been filling in with odd jobs here and there until I became a doula, and now I work it around my kid's schedule. So I just see how important it was for me to be home with them, and I desperately wanted to be here. And I hear that so often from so many women that they don't want to go back to work, but they don't know how to make it happen. Or thankfully, I have had clients that have been able to take extended maternity leaves, or they stack it up with their spouses. So somebody's home with that baby for at least 6 months, or switch to work from home. So even though it's not completely ideal, at least that baby is there with them. They can continue to nurse. And it's so hard to nurse to continue that breastfeeding relationship if you are going back and away to work. And the statistics in the US are, by 6 months, it's like 25%. I'd have to look it up. I will put this in the show notes, but I think it's like 25% of the women who start breastfeeding are still breastfeeding at 6 months,
Wow.
even though the CDC recommends up to 2 years. I mean, I fell into that category, and I've talked about my own breastfeeding journey myself, and I had some other complications that didn't have to do with work. But with this more masculine society, like you're saying, that breastfeeding relationship, the mother baby dyad, that's what we will call it in the doula field or in the medical field or perinatal space, is just not as protected.
This is I love that she's getting more press, Erica. She's been like on a lot of the major podcast rounds, and she really does say that what she's talking about is kind of an inconvenient truth, because the reality is that the way we've built our society, I'm just like there's a grand bamboozling happening, like how is it that we have now two people working in the household, but yet it used to be 20 years ago we could survive on one income. Now we need like two incomes. Like we've been
Mhm.
bamboozled here, like we didn't double our, or maybe we did double our life quality of life in some ways, but we just don't. It's almost like lifestyle creep in a way. It's interesting because she talks about the fact that, yeah, like it is there's some element of sacrifice to make that possible. May it be grandparents have to be present, or part-time work, or taking extended break and reducing lifestyle costs in some way, if you even have that option, because I know a lot of women don't even have that option. But I do think that it's worth talking about the importance of that and validating women that feel called to stay home with their kids, because for so long we had like only one narrative, which was the lean in narrative, which, by the way, you're talking to somebody who has lived that narrative for so
Right.
many years, and I'm still involved in that community, right? Like I still do work part time as a fractional product owner for one company right now, but it's just so important, I think, to talk about the other narrative and to encourage women to get creative with it. But it is, I mean, I commend you because I think it's courageous to make that choice. It's not the easy choice because especially when you had your second kid, like there weren't that many people talking about that as the norm. Like the norm, the encouraged norm was not to do that. So I think it's courageous.
Well, thank you. It is. It's hard. It takes a lot of sacrifice, but thankfully, my family was so supportive of me doing that and saw the importance of it. And I think there was a lot of history of that in my family too. My mom stayed home with me until I went to preschool. I know my aunt with my cousins, she took some time off until they were like Irish twins, until they were old enough, and then they had my grandma was able to step in and help support. And so when you have that family structure and that support, obviously it makes it so much easier in order to do that. But ultimately, if it is our goal, if it's your goal as a woman in order to stay home with your kids, it does take sacrifice and it takes planning. And
Mm.
if you're serious about it, you can get really serious during that preconception phase and really be thinking about, okay, what is this stage going to look like? If we do need more money, how can we do that creatively? And how can we pull in that support? That's constantly what I'm talking about as a postpartum doula is building a support system. And I know it's hard, and I know a lot of women will say, "Well, I don't have one." Well, sometimes we have to step out and build one, and it's not family, it's friends that become your family. And that's really what has happened with us. Even though I do have familial support, my parents are young and still working, and then my husband and I both lost a parent while we were very young. So we've had to build those friendships and those relationships in order to ask for help, and then in return we're there to help too. But it really is something that you have to consider from all angles, whether it's your first or your second or your third or your fourth. Being willing to be flexible in that scheduling and what life is going to look like. Because if you would have asked me 8 years ago when I got pregnant, oh, I'm going to continue teaching for 35 years, there was no doubt in my mind. There was none. And I would just go back to work immediately, 6 weeks, 12 weeks after baby, because that's just what you do. And
Yeah.
I saw so many women in my field do it. It's a predominantly woman-led field, and it just seemed like the natural thing to do. But I just wanted something different for myself, and that's okay. And we have to lean into that too as we figure our way through this journey from maiden to mother.
I agree with you. I feel like times are shifting back because we know the research is out there that isolation is like one of the leading comorbidities, like loneliness and isolation. According to the
Hmm.
US Surgeon General, loneliness is as bad for our bodies as smoking. And so we need to create like communities of support. And loneliness is not just like, are we surrounded by the right people, but do we feel connected and supported? Like, do we have the connection that we feel we are seeking, right? And that could look like more support for a mother, and it could look very different for somebody who doesn't have children yet or has children that are older. But I do so agree with you. Like the creation of that and proactively doing that is so key. I love that.
And it even brings me back to our cycles. There are times when we feel more vulnerable. And there are times when our intuition is rising, like at the beginning of the cycle of how can we lean into that in building community. I see it so often in that postpartum period. And it's interesting that it lines up with the winter of your
Mm,
cycle, right?
yeah.
And I think if more women knew that naturally this is, you see a dip in hormones and some hormones come up like prolactin as we're, if you're nursing. And with that, while you're nursing, oxytocin goes up. That's why breastfeeding can actually be very protective for your mental health, which is also something that's not talked about.
Ooh, I didn't
But
know that.
yeah, so leaning into that winter phase of replenishment, I think we would take it more seriously and realize that we do need support and more women are asking for it, but there still is such a stigma of I've just had a baby. I need to know how to do it, and if I don't know how to do it, then I look like a bad mom. But you're really not. You're just learning, and your baby is learning, and you're learning together. And that's why that rest is so important, so that you can bond and figure out those cues. And everybody does. Everybody does over time. But if you're not giving yourself that space for the winter time to rest, and you're trying to push into spring and summer too fast, it's really interesting doing what I do and reading the research of why they think postpartum depression and anxiety
Mm,
happens. And isolation is huge, of course, but also the nutritional depletion, like we talked about. And there's other factors, right? Have you experienced mental health issues in the past? Do you have a support system? But there's so much that we can do to support ourselves and as women who have experienced it, I think we do. We have an obligation to come alongside other women and help them through that process.
I love that. I love that. So powerful. I want to thank you for having me. And to any woman out there listening, I would just like to validate and remind her, as I remind myself every single month, that our bodies are so, so wise, and the cues, the messages that our bodies send us, sometimes in good feelings, sometimes in bad, sometimes in symptoms, sometimes in a very easeful experience. They're all just means of communication and an opportunity to just respond to that bid for connection. And if we can honor that and lean into that, we as women are really taking back our power. And I think the more that we do that, the more we can teach our daughters to do that and support other women on the journey. Because we really do need feminine leadership in all its shapes and forms. And so, yeah, I just hope this will be a call to reclaiming that for anyone listening.
I love that so much. Could not love it more. So tell everyone where they can connect with you and where they can find your planner.
Thank you. Well, you can find Inflow at inflowplanner.com, and you can connect with me. Well, a great way to stay connected is via the podcast, which is the Other Way podcast on Spotify, Apple, all the platforms. And I'm also on Instagram under the Other Way podcast as well. Although I'm not as active on there, I'll be opening up a Substack soon, so you can find out more information just by searching. It's called The Other Way, where we explore those paths less taken. Lots of talking around this and other concepts related to this. Our theme for 2025 is really exploring the other way for women, which is kind of part of this whole revolution that I'm talking about.
Friends, I hope you enjoyed that podcast episode as much as I did, and I cannot wait to talk to you all again next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the A Bridge to Motherhood podcast. I'm so glad you are here today. If you loved this episode, I'd be so grateful if you could leave a review for the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Share it with a friend or snap a screenshot and tag me on social media. If you decide to leave me a review, go to abridgetomotherhood.com/review. That link is also in the show notes so that I can send you a little gift in the mail. Your support helps other moms to find the podcast, and it truly means the world to me. Remember, your motherhood journey deserves your care and attention. Until next time, keep showing up for yourself, mama, and don't worry, I'm here to help every step of the way. See you soon.